What if even the cheapest meal was no longer guaranteed in America in just the past decade? Over 10,000 fast food locations across the US have vanished. Subway alone shut down more than 4,000 stores. Quiznos 96% gone. Boston Market lost its headquarters. These are billion-dollar giants. Yet in today's economy, they are still falling one by one. Is this because the US, no longer cares about its working class people? Is it eventually decided to leave behind the poor one because they couldn't benefit the country anymore? For decades, fast food wasn't just food, it was a promise that no matter how broke you were, how long your shift ran, how tight the money was, there would always be something hot, cheap, and affordable for you. But now, that promise is breaking. Fewer places to eat. No more backup when the paycheck's late. If even America's biggest food brands can't survive rising costs, shrinking demand, and collapsing consumer budgets, what chance does anyone else have today? We expose 7 fast food giants that might not make it through 2025. This is the Downturn Report, where the truth gets personal. Number 1. Subway. Imagine the dark future when you wake up and suddenly realize the last place you can afford to eat just disappeared. Meanwhile, you have no time to manage homemade meals. And even if you try to, the ingredients also cost you an arm and a leg. What do you do in this situation? No warning, no goodbye. One day, it's a warm meal and a familiar smile. The next, it's a dark storefront and a for-lease sign flapping in the wind. Subway used to be everywhere. Gas stations, Walmart corners, small-town main streets. And for millions, it was more than just a fast meal. It was the final fallback. When groceries were too expensive, when restaurants were out of reach, Subway was there. $5, a sandwich, a bit of comfort. Not fancy, not glamorous, but it was yours. Now, that quiet safety net is tearing apart. More than 4,000 Subway locations have shuttered in the last 5 years. In 2023, the entire company was sold off. Quietly, cheaply, far below industry expectations. Franchise owners have been sounding the alarm. Outrageous fees, overpriced supplies from the parent company, and impossible margins. Add the blows to reputation, like the infamous tuna lawsuit or reports of chemicals in their bread. Then, trust has eroded alongside profit. But underneath all of that, something deeper is unraveling. Subway was never just about food, it was about stability, a small routine that gave people on the edge of poverty a tiny piece of control. For delivery drivers between shifts, it was hot and filling. For retired veterans living alone, it was predictable and easy to chew. For students trying to stretch loan money, it was healthier than a bag of chips and cheaper than a meal at any sit-down place. And now, as more Subways vanish from both cities and rural roads, so does that fragile layer of hope and belief. In towns where the only other options are drive-through burgers or gas station snacks, the loss of Subway is more than an inconvenience. It's a quiet descent into food insecurity. Not just hunger, but lack of access, of choice, of hope. Think about those small-town strip malls, already half empty. The grocery store closed years ago. Now the last Subway closes too. The lights go out, the smell of bread vanishes. And what remains a dollar menu no one trusts, and a grocery aisle too far away to reach without a car. This isn't about the fall of a brand. It's about the slow disappearance of places where regular people still felt like customers, not burdens. And for those who lived day to day, paycheck to paycheck, Subway was one of the last things left that didn't judge, didn't cost too much, didn't demand anything but a few wrinkled bills. But that comfort is slipping away. Not with a bang, but with empty shelves, with locked doors, with silence where there used to be bread baking. And if something as simple, as basic, as human as a $5 sandwich can no longer survive here, how much longer can the rest of us pretend everything is still okay? Sometimes, it's not the collapse that breaks us. It's what disappears quietly. Until we look up and realize there's nowhere left to go. Just hunger, a long road, and the memory of what used to be $5 well spent. Number 2, Boston Market. What happens when even home meals are priced out of reach? The smell of hot chicken, soft cornbread, and buttery mashed potatoes. The kind of food that doesn't just feed you, it remembers you. And now, even that is vanishing, one darkened storefront at a time. There was a time when Boston Market felt like the last warm table in a cold world. No fryers, no plastic toys, no blaring menus, just real food, served hot, at a price that didn't feel punishing. Roast chicken that reminded you of Sunday dinners, sides that didn't come from a freezer bag. A meal that felt like someone had taken their time, for once. But today, that table is empty. The fall has been quiet but brutal. From over 200 locations at its peak, Boston Market now operates fewer than 300. Some stores shut down without a word. Employees showing up to find locked doors and unpaid wages. Even the company's headquarters was recently evicted for missing rent. The decline isn't just a matter of money. It's a sign that something deeper is breaking apart. Boston Market couldn't keep pace with the modern hunger for ultra speed and low effort in a world dominated by delivery apps, meal kits, and microwavable trays. The idea of slow roasted anything began to feel out of step. Health trends moved fast. Tech moved faster. And Boston Market, caught between nostalgia and reality, simply stood still. But this isn't just the story of a company that failed to evolve. It's the story of what disappears when that failure takes root in neighborhoods already stretched thin. For many elderly people, Boston Market was more than a meal. It was an anchor. A place they could walk to, sit down without rush, and eat something warm without feeling out of place. It was routine, familiarity, a way to feel human in a world that no longer makes room for slow, steady needs. For working class parents, it was the middle ground, something between fast food and cooking from scratch, a backup plan that didn't feel like giving up, a place you could take your kids and say, "This is kind of like what Grandma used to make, not greasy, not synthetic, just enough to feel okay." Now that middle ground is disappearing. What remains are harsh choices, frozen dinners eaten alone, or dollar menu burgers eaten fast. Grocery store hot bars are too expensive. Cooking from scratch, that takes time. Tools and energy many people just don't have anymore. And so, slowly, communities are losing the one thing that kept dinner time human. Not gourmet, not fancy, just real. And when that's gone, something unspoken shifts. It's not just about hunger. It's about being forgotten. Boston Market stood for something simple, that even if you couldn't make dinner yourself, you could still sit down to something made with care. And when that disappears, especially for those who live alone or struggle to make ends meet, the world gets a little colder. There are no headlines when roast chicken vanishes, no press conferences when mashed potatoes are replaced by meal bars. But you feel it, in the silence where laughter once lived, in the rush where patience once sat. And if homestyle no longer has a home on your street, then where do working families go when all they want is just one warm meal that feels like someone cared? Number 3, Steak and Shake. What if one day you walked into your favorite restaurant and no one looked up? No greeting. No "can I help you?" Just a glowing kiosk screen asking for your credit card and your silence. The booths are still there, but the soul has left the building. There was a time when Steak and Shake offered more than burgers. It offered a pause. A bit of warmth wrapped in diner chrome and checkered floors. Someone brought your food to you, called you sweetheart, and refilled your coffee without being asked. For just $8, you didn't just eat, you were acknowledged. That's what made Steak and Shake different. It wasn't upscale, but it satisfied you. A real glass for your milkshake, a plate that wasn't made of paper. Time slowed down just enough for conversation. For working families, for retirees, for kids after school, it felt like something special, something still yours. But all of that is slipping away. Since 2018, more than 300 Steak and Shake locations have shut their doors. The company came within inches of bankruptcy, struggling to repay $153 million in debt. The solution: strip away the service, Remove the servers, cut out the warmth, now, in many locations. Customers walk in to find ordering kiosks, food lockers, and silence. No one carries their meal. The cost is lower, but so is the experience. And that shift speaks volumes. Because this wasn't just about food, it was about a rhythm. A place where even if you were broke, you could still sit down and be treated with respect. Steak and Shake was where tired factory workers could feel like a guest. Where a senior with arthritis didn't have to struggle to carry a tray. Where parents could give their kids a birthday treat that didn't feel like a downgrade. Replacing all of that with machines doesn't just remove labor. It removes connection. It removes the smile from the server who remembers your order. The "how are you today" that means more when no one else has asked you all week. For older Americans who don't drive. For those who read menus better than apps. For people who want to talk to a person, not a screen. This is exile. And there's something cruel about it. Because when even the cheap diners no longer offer you a seat and a smile, what remains when the places once built to serve everyone now tell you to serve yourself? What message does that send? Steak and Shake didn't fail because the food changed. The burgers are still decent, the milkshake is still sweet. It failed because the world around it stopped making space for slowness, for kindness, for people who just wanted to sit down and be treated like they mattered. And maybe that's the hardest part. The food was never the point. The point was being seen, being served, being worth someone else's time. So what are we losing? Quietly, one kiosk at a time. Number 4, Checkers and Rallies. What if the only place left to grab a hot meal just vanished overnight? Checkers and Rallies wasn't built for luxury. It was built for speed, for grit, for people who couldn't afford to wait or spend. The black and white tiles, the double-lane drive-thru, the $2 burger drenched in sauce, these were familiar comforts for working-class neighborhoods across the South and Midwest. No dining room, no frills, just hot food, fast and cheap. For many, it was a ritual, the post-shift dinner, the late-night indulgence, the family meal when the stove stayed cold. But now, even that is disappearing. In 2023, Checkers and Rallies filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, sinking under more than $650 million in debt. Dozens of stores closed without notice. Workers showed up to lock doors. Customers arrived to drive-through lanes sealed off with caution tape. There were no headlines, no big farewells. Just silence and emptiness where something once stood. And the truth cuts deeper than the numbers. This was one of the first chains to completely abandon dine-in service, decades before apps and ghost kitchens took over. It thrived in places where other brands didn't bother to go. Where the customers paid in crumpled bills and counted change at the window. Where fast food wasn't a choice, it was a necessity. But while the world changed, Checkers stood still. Its menu, frozen in the 1990s. No healthy alternatives, no mobile ordering, no loyalty program. While other chains evolved or diversified, Checkers doubled down on deep-fried nostalgia, and it wasn't enough. So what happens when the last cheap dinner option on the block disappears for a grandmother grabbing dinner for her grandkids? It means frozen pizza again. For the night shift warehouse worker with no car, it means hunger or a walk through unsafe streets. For the single dad picking up fries after daycare drop-off, it means another compromise in a week already full of them, in many neighborhoods. Checkers wasn't just a burger joint. It was the only light still on after 10 p.m. The only place you could eat without getting out of your car. The only stop that didn't ask for a phone, an app, or an explanation, just cash and appetite. And when that's gone, people don't just lose food, they lose rhythm. They lose routine. They lose the quiet assurance that at least one place still worked, still served, still showed up. There's a haunting kind of grief when a place built for you quietly decides you're no longer worth serving. When the only affordable meal nearby becomes a boarded-up shell, what does that leave behind? A block darker, a street emptier, a life that feels just a bit more isolated. Checkers and Rallies tried to build its empire on fries and familiarity, but even fries can't hold up a roof when the foundation is rotted out. No investment in people, no adaptation, just grease and debt. And now, in the places where it mattered most, the only thing left is the echo of what used to be a glow in the night, a bite of comfort, a place that didn't ask questions. If the last cheap meal option fades into the overgrown cracks of a parking lot, what does that say about where we're headed? Because when even the fast food chains that catered to the bottom of the economic ladder start collapsing, it's not just food access we're losing, it's the final thread of belonging. Number 5, Del Taco. What if your town only had 2 places to eat hot food and one of them quietly disappeared overnight? No warning, no goodbye, just an empty sign, a locked door, and one less reason to pull into that parking lot. For many small towns and working-class neighborhoods, Del Taco wasn't just an option, it was the fallback. The compromise, the one place where a taco, burger, and fries all lived under one roof because sometimes you didn't have the luxury to choose. Del Taco was never the loudest name in fast food, but for a time, it punched above its weight. With over 580 locations and an odd but beloved slogan, Mexican fast food with fries, it tried to carve out a space between Taco Bell and McDonald's. And for a while, it worked. Families went there because no one had to argue about dinner. You wanted a burrito done. She wanted a cheeseburger. Also done. Fries for the table. Always. But the cracks were always there. The brand never knew quite what it wanted to be. Was it Mexican-inspired, classic American? Both neither. That identity crisis didn't matter much until the competition got smarter. Taco Bell leaned hard into bold, youthful branding. McDonald's stayed iconic and relentless. Del Taco offered a bit of everything, but not enough of anything. And in the ruthless world of fast food, that kind of confusion costs more than customers. It costs survival. In 2021, Del Taco was bought out by Jack in the Box. What followed was not innovation, but slow silence. Locations stopped opening. Many existing ones quietly shut down. No announcements. No reinvention. Just empty parking lots and dark windows where something used to be. The consequences are sharpest in places where choice was already a luxury. For students needing a quick, cheap bite after school. For truckers passing through long stretches of highway. For single parents looking for a hot meal after 2 jobs, Del Taco was that breath of relief. A burrito big enough to share. Fries crisp enough to feel like a treat. It was messy. It was inconsistent. But it was there. Now not even the crinkle-cut fries remain in some towns. And that's the deeper loss, because when even the fast food chains that never quite knew what they were still vanish, what does that leave behind for people already pushed to the margins? The alternative isn't some exciting new option. It's more processed food, more expensive menus, or just no food at all. Del Taco's most popular item isn't even its namesake, it's the fries. That small detail says everything. The tacos forgotten, the burgers meh, but the fries, they stayed. Because in the end, the brand known for blending cultures ended up standing for the one thing that had nothing to do with either. And when that fries and fog identity finally runs out, it leaves behind something worse than hunger uncertainty. One more shuttered storefront. One more vanishing compromise. One less place that made hard lives a little easier for those who relied on Del Taco. The collapse doesn't just mean fewer calories, it means fewer choices. And in a country where poverty already comes with isolation, that shrinking of possibility hits hard. So if your tacos are less memorable than your fries, maybe you were never really in the taco business at all. Number 6, Crystal. What if the only place where $4 could still feed you simply vanished? Crystal was never built to be a national juggernaut. It didn't need to be. It thrived quietly across the southeast Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi with tiny burgers, warm paper bags, and a loyal, working-class base who didn't ask for much. 6 sliders for under $5, maybe some chili cheese fries. A drink big enough to last through the long drive home. For many, that wasn't just dinner, it was dignity. But that soft, unassuming comfort is slipping into memory. In 2020, Crystal filed for bankruptcy over $100 million in debt just before the fall. They abruptly shuttered 44 locations without notice. Employees arrived to lock doors. Locals showed up to find their hangout gone. Months later, the entire brand was sold off for a mere $27 million, a figure so small, it could barely buy a handful of franchises from more powerful rivals. The failure wasn't dramatic, it was slow and deeply human. While other chains rushed to update, offering digital kiosks, delivery partnerships, even app-based loyalty points, Crystal stayed still. It relied on routine. It relied on the people who didn't need new menus or marketing stunts. But in a world speeding past, routine alone couldn't save it. As brands like Raising Cane's expanded rapidly with sleek design and fresher food, Crystal was left behind, shrinking, forgotten. And what gets lost isn't just a burger, it's a place, a ritual, a rhythm that tied together long days and short nights. The high school student grabbing a quick dinner before his night shift. The elderly couple sharing a small bag of sliders on a bench. The single parent feeding 2 kids for less than $10. In many parts of the rural South, Crystal was the only fast food chain within reach. There was no Whole Foods, no Trader Joe's, not even reliable delivery. Public buses didn't come by. Gas wasn't cheap. So Crystal became more than a meal, it was infrastructure. A safety net with steam on the window and grease on the bag. Now just faded signs, empty buildings, asphalt cracked from years of neglect. The places that once promised a cheap meal and a seat are disappearing, and no one seems to notice except those who needed it most. And it leaves behind a quiet ache. Because when you grow up with something, even something small, even something greasy, you think it'll always be there, until it isn't. Until the warmth is replaced by silence. Until the lights go out for good. Crystal's sliders were small. Its footprint, modest. But its loss signals something bigger that in America, 2020, even the smallest comforts are becoming luxuries. Even the cheapest food isn't cheap anymore. Even the regional rituals that defined a place can be erased, without headlines or protests. And for those who still pass by those abandoned stores, the message feels personal. Like a reminder that nothing stays, not even the things that used to cost $4 and carry you through the hardest days. Number 7, Quiznos. What if 96% of a restaurant chain could disappear and no one noticed until it was almost gone one day? There were over 5,000 Quiznos across America. Today, fewer than 200 remain, a collapse so total, so quiet. It feels like watching a familiar street fade from a childhood memory and realizing it's not there anymore. There was a time when Quiznos terrified Subway. Their toasted subs were more than a gimmick. They were warmth, flavor, texture, melted cheese, crisp edges, smoky sauces. They offered a rare kind of upgrade for people who didn't have the time or money for a full-service meal. A hot sandwich on a cold day. A brief escape from vending machines and plastic-wrapped everything. It felt like care, like someone had turned the dial slightly toward human, but that heat is cooled, permanently. Quiznos wasn't crushed by a scandal or a boycott. It wasn't undone by changing tastes overnight. It was something worse, a slow failure to evolve, to protect its people, and to know its worth. Franchise owners, once hopeful, were forced to buy overpriced ingredients from corporate suppliers. They were squeezed until the profits dried up, and when the customer base started slipping, there was nothing left to hold on to. Bankruptcy came not once, but twice in 2014 and 2018, and each time, more lights went out, more stores vanished. The brand that once felt like an affordable luxury was reduced to a whisper. Meanwhile, rivals surged. Jersey Mike's offered real meat and hometown charm. Firehouse Subs branded itself around service and generosity. Even Subway found ways to repackage itself. And Quiznos kept selling the same toasted sub at the same premium price, with fewer reasons to choose it. Its quirky marketing confused more than it charmed. Its identity once bold blurred. And so, for the people who once found joy in those sandwiches, students, office workers, teachers on lunch break, the disappearance of Quiznos stings deeper than nostalgia. It's not just a lost meal. It's a sign that in this economy, being good enough isn't good enough. That if a brand can rise to 5,000 stores and still fall through the cracks, what chance does anything have unless it either scales to infinity or shrinks into oblivion? In neighborhoods where Quiznos used to fill a gap between fast and fresh, there's now nothing. No warm sandwich, no break in the routine, just more vending machines, more grab and go with less to hold on to. The small joy of a toasted sub gone. And when small joys vanish, quietly, so do the little moments that once made a hard day bearable. Quiznos once offered just enough not fancy, not cheap just enough. And now, that middle ground is disappearing from everywhere, not because no one wants it, but because the system no longer makes room for enough. Toasted subs used to be Quiznos' sharpest weapon, but now, every chain has a toaster oven. And Quiznos, it's become a fading echo from a simpler time. A lunch break that used to feel like yours, now swallowed by the silence of stores that no longer open. This isn't just the fall of 7 fast food chains, it's the quiet collapse of a whole way of life. A culture once built on $5 meals, drive-thrus, and the belief that even the working class could afford a warm bite after a long day. But now, when fast food is no longer fast, no longer cheap, who is it really for? And if even burgers and fries are giving up on ordinary people? What else might disappear next? Have you worked at Quiznos? Did checkers get you through tough weeks? Tell us your story. Because this video is about you.